Hello, 안녕하세요, everyone. First of all, 감사합니다. Thank you very much for organizing this wonderful congress and for inviting me for this plenary session. It's a really honor to be invited together with Annie Miller, one of the founder of BIKN, and also honored to be chaired by Carl Weiderquist. Deep apologies that I could not be in Seoul in person. I miss you, Annie, Carl, Hyo-sang, and our Korean friend. Today, I am talking on the history of the discussion on the definition of basic income. But unlike Annie's powerful presentation, it is not my aim to argue either for or against the current BIKN definition. Rather, I want to situate this definition historiographically, enabling fruitful discussion. My presentation is partially based on my paper published in the last year, showing the slide, but also has some new arguments that weren't in the paper. I have had two occasions of privilege to collectively learn from our friend. One was actually in Seoul when the BIKN's Congress happened in the first occasion in East Asia. It was 2016, where the working group for the definition of basic income was set, and I was appointed to the chair. The second occasion was the BIKN General Assembly in Hyderabad, 2019. General Assembly determined to have a working group for the clarification of basic income definition and appointed Annie and myself as co-chairs. I have learned a lot in these two occasions, and the latter occasion is still continuing, but the view shown in this presentation does not represent neither of the working group, and it is entirely my personal view. So, does a penny per month constitute a basic income? Was that penny to be paid individually, universally, and unconditionally? The answer is yes, following the definition of basic income given by our BIKN or by Philippe Van Pares and Yannick Vanderbolt's book in 2017. However, the answer would be no if we were to follow either definitions adopted by more than 10 regional affiliates of BIKN or definitions by some leading advocates such as Guy Standing in his several books, or Carl Weiderquist, or Philip himself again, but in his paper in 1989. So the fundamental difference between those two is whether there is some notion of threshold level to be taken as minimum or as adequate. Notion of threshold is multifariously worded, like as I show in this slide, like covering basic need or constitute minimum, etc. What is common among the latter in the previous slide, like Guy and Carl and our 10 regional affiliates, all of them presuppose a certain minimum threshold as essential component of basic income. Here I use the term threshold as shorthand for minimum threshold. I do not mean to suggest the maximum threshold. I used to use this image to explain what is basic income and what is not. And obviously, as you all might agree, among those four, this is below right. This one is basic income. But recently, some in the BIKN criticized to have a basic income with this kind of threshold. Yes, that question is right in terms of a BIKN definition. So maybe we need to take BIKN definition seriously. Then we need another picture, another image. That is this one. So this one is more accurate. Well, those images cannot be accurate in any sense, but intuitively we can grasp with those kind of image, and this one is much more properly corresponding to our BIKN definition. So now let me concentrate on the contrast of these two. Yes. So this is one with a threshold, basic income with a threshold, right? And this line is a threshold level. But now, Ebian's definition doesn't have this kind of threshold, so it can be either 1 penny or 1 won, or whatever, or one real, or whatever currency it is. It can be really small. And so it can be captured like this. And in my paper, I call it like basic income without threshold, but it's very difficult to pronounce, so, and also not intuitive. So now I suggest to call it basic income as negative poll tax. Poll tax is a tax. Everyone have to pay same amount of tax. But by definition, in the definition, there are no level amount of the burden tax is referred. So this BN definition of basic income is exactly same as or nothing more than what we could call negative poll tax. So yes, in order to avoid with without it's a bit confusing. So this one is basic income with a threshold. This one basic income as negative poll tax. I would differentiate to call in this way through the rest of my presentation. So now, why do we have those two different definitions of basic income? How are we in this parallel world? In order to understand why we are in this parallel world, we need to locate our current situation in the history. So please let me give you an overview of history of the term basic income. As far as I was able to trace back to on the usage of the term basic income, in the sense that related to our current use, either with threshold or as negative poll tax model, it can be traced back to 1919. Dennis Miller, who was advocate of state bonus, referred his idea as basic minimum income. But inserting the term like minimum between the basic and income, some might argue it's not the exact use of the term basic income. Then we can have another year, well, it's 1932, and 1932, 3, 4, Hobart, Paulus, Van Tirvans, Serulsken, advocate basis in common, and also around the same time, Jan T. Bergen, later he got Nobel Prize of Economics, advocated basis in common. And well, again, why you suddenly mention a Dutch language is we should stick in English. And then I could offer another year. It's 1939. Everybody knows the economist John Maynard Keynes. He got a letter from George Vandenberg, and in that letter, George Vandenberg explained the basic income to John Maynard Keynes. And it's a private letter, and some of you are not happy. I mentioned those guys saying which should be in a publication, everybody can see it. And then 1953, George D.H. Cole, who had been advocating social dividend, somehow his proposal social dividend, many people put it in the history of basic income, but his proposal itself is conditional. But he referred to John Stuart Mill's remark on some foolish idea in mid-19th century, and it was unconditional. Well, we are not sure it's really individual based or not, but yes, when he referred to John Stuart Mill, he used the term basic income. And all of these, well, you can decide which is the proper beginning of our basic income, but all of them come with some threshold, concept of threshold. All of them don't think a penny amount of basic income. So we would say safely in the beginning with a threshold. So then in 1960s, 70s, there are vague concepts of basic income or guaranteed income and minimum income circulated, and they were interchangeably used. All came with a threshold. And let me give you one concrete example. In the UK, the women claimant union articulated what initially they called guaranteed adequate income, and it was around 1972, but 1977, they succeeded to make what they called guaranteed minimum income at the time as an official demand of the British women's liberation movement. And how they defined as that guaranteed minimum income, is it unconditional, it's individual, it's universal, and it came with a threshold. And then 1980s is a very special decade, because what makes different this decade from the before I explained is, in the case of Jan Tinbergen, GDH Cole, they advocated something now we call basic income, but it's kind of individual endeavor. And there are some criticism and correspondence that exists, but it's not really proper collective discussion on it. And in the case of Clement Union, yes, they have an intense internal discussion among Clement, people who gathered in the Clement Union, but it's not academic. By the 1980s, we started to have collective but academically rigorous discussion. And the first occasion I would take is Basic Income Research Group, a British organization. Now it still exists under a different name. It's called Citizens Basic Income Trust, UK. And this was founded in 1984. And in the first occasion, at least 1988, they officially defined basic income as to guarantee to each man, woman, and child the unconditional right to an independent income sufficient to meet basic living costs. Or there are several other wordings, but all of definition by them come with a threshold. And well, please delete official from this slide. Maybe Walter Van Trier, my admirable friend, was not happy with to call this letter as official. But Philip Van Pares organized two very, very important international conferences in 1980s. One is 1986, the other is 1989. And the 1986 one, people gathered in this conference decided to launch Basic Income European Network. And so as a secretary of the conference, Philip sent a letter to the participant and who are interested in basic income but not coming to the conference. And in that letter, yes, Philip announced and launched a foundation, Basic Income European Network, and there he describes basic income with this threshold. I thought this is the official letter from the Congress because it's under the name of the secretary of the conference, but it might be misunderstandable like official letter beyond, which I don't mean, so that please delete this official. And thank you for reminding me this, Volta. Well, Volta, I'm not sure he is here or not. And the latter conference Philip organized in 1989, Philip gave kind of opening presentation, and there he distinguished two concepts. One is called basic income, the other is called the universal grant. And universal grant is something similar to negative poll tax, as we know now, BM definition of the basic income. But basic income, what he called at the time in 1989, that is sufficient to cover a person's basic need. So it comes with threshold. Yes, The definition is threshold continue because that conference, 1989 conference, the result of which became a book called Arguing for Basic Income, edited by Philip Van Parijs. And there, Philip Van Parijs in that book changed his definition, but many contributors follow the Philip's definition in 1989, that is come with threshold. I can just give you a few examples, like all our famous philosophers. John Baker is still, is he here? I don't know if he's here. Say hello, hello, John. But all of them define basic income with threshold. This continue to this day. As I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, Guy Standing, I cited from his book in 2011, but in many other books, his definition of basic income come with some kind of threshold. And Carl Weiderquist, Carl, hi, hello. Yes, Carl's book, it's one of my favorite books, Basic Income, which published in 2013. And here again, he defined basic income with threshold. And also many our regional affiliates. This is a case of unquoted basic income Europe. It says what is basic income and it's high enough. This is a case of basic income Ireland, sufficient to live a frugal but decent life without additional income. And this is a case of basic income Canada network. So now, how negative for tax type of definition is invented in this history? It was in the late 1980s. BN, 1986 gathering was not, well, now we call it the first Congress, but people gathered without knowing it would be called the first Congress of BN in the history. But people gathered as they known as a BN Congress. The first one is actually 1988, where it is recorded as second. And that second conference in General Assembly, they agreed to have a definition, and it was negative poll tax type of definition. And we have occasion to discuss and change a bit definition in 2016. It's quite funny. There are two motions. One of them has a threshold. One of them is two options. One has a threshold, and we kind of agreed to have a threshold in our definition, but somehow we could not reach the consensus on what's the wording of it. Then in the end, the definition left out without any threshold. So since 1988, when BIAN had official definition basic income, until today, the BIAN's definition of basic income come without threshold. So it's a negative for tax model. And citizen income trust, I mentioned, it's changed, definition of basic income in 1988. And Philip, yes, as I shown here and also the previous slide in 1989, he defined basic income as sufficient to cover person's basic need, and also says that is one connotation of the basic income as it is standard to be understood. But 3 years later, when he published the book, came out of that conference, his position totally changed. As I expressed on basic income, not, however, meant to suggest link with so-called basic need. Yes, the reason that changed at the BRG, CBIT, it's interesting. In the 1988 spring newsletter, informed they had a panel to discuss, internal panel in the group to discuss officially what basic income should be defined. And Bill Jordan put a report as a capacity of represented that panel. And their basic income has a criteria of adequacy that means thresholds. But few months later, the chairperson of the organization, Tony Walter, declares our definition is with their definition is without threshold, and he criticized the need-based definition, and also he published a book to criticize the use of the concept of need in general. So, and I don't go in why Philip changed. Well, change is not good word, because Philip is an intellectual who also advocate many things and think many things in French. And in French, as far as I understand from my correspondence with Philip, he had the initial idea, allocation universelle in French, and it comes without threshold, so that it's not just one direction change. Initially, he had his own idea with a threshold, and then somehow in several occasions, I didn't say a few other occasions, but there are not only the one I presented, but several other occasions in the mid-1990s, he once accommodates the basic income as having threshold, and then 1992 he changed or went back to the idea, but it was the first occasion he used the term basic income without threshold. So anyway, it's better Philip to explain what was behind, but go back from history to now, today, for us. What's wrong with the omission of the threshold from the definition? There are logical rupture, like a penny a month, paid unconditionally automatically individually in non-withdrawal manner under the right of citizenship, is a basic income if we take a case of CBIT. And the same CBIT says such an income can provide a secure financial platform to build on, enable the employment market to become more flexible at the same time as enhancing security, etc. There are something amiss, logically speaking, and they presuppose some notion of threshold. Otherwise, those arguments cannot stand logically. And also, other issue is, as Philip himself eloquently explained to us, we cannot use full basic income, partial basic income in the usage in the sense we use today, because when a penny a month can be a genuine full basic income fully matched the criteria of being basic income, how 200 quid, 200 times more than £1 basic income, for example, can be called partial? The other reason is the historical revisionism, but I would not go this further. If you're interested, see my paper. And then the political danger. Again, go back to the CB example of CBIT. They claim we need to replace the present benefit and tax system by basic income, by their definition, which is as low as a penny a month. It can be a very vulnerable, can be dangerous for least advantaged people in the society. And yes, I'm running out of time, so I couldn't go in the detail and discussion what happened in the Seoul in 2016. If you're interested, please see my paper. Let me conclude now. So this paper does not intend to offer any solution to this parallelism, but Philip's distinction between basic income and universal grant in 1989 would be one possible solution. This distinction can accommodate sense of possible merit of negative poll tax type of the definition without ignoring history of the idea and the people who struggled for it. Here, basic income comes with a threshold. The concept with a threshold could be called universal grant or unconditional income or negative poll tax, whatever. We could have different names with different things. And this presentation I only concentrate on either we have threshold or not in the definition, but there are many other things, ambiguity in our definition. And we need to understand more about those kind of things and its connotations. And more fundamental question I would like to raise at the last. Is basic income a purely academically prompted idea, such as political theorists' roles, different principles, or flips and dominated diversity, or Chicago School's economists, negative income tax? They are, yes, kind of invented by one famous scholar or a collective of scholars. But, or is basic income more of a social construct, features of complex origins, not only from ivory towers, but also the many struggles all over the world? And then it's very difficult to one organization such as BIKN can define this is right, that is wrong, and try to politicize the usage. Like, freedom, equality, people use in a different meaning, and in order to have a rational conversation, we can check in which sense we are using that term. I think in my take of basic income is something similar to those latter cases. Yes, thank you again for your listening, and apologies again, I could not be in Seoul in physical. It's really sad for me, but hope I would have a time to visit there and meet a friend. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.